I'm Alicia. Today, we are on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations, also known as Vancouver, British Columbia, to visit the BC Centre for Ability. It can be difficult to understand children's behaviors, especially ones that challenge us. Understanding children's behaviors starts with the idea that behavior is communication. When we think about what a child is trying to say through their actions, we can better understand how to meet their needs. This allows us to co-regulate and model regulation skills depending on the environments and relationships within our programs. Let's go see what excellent behavior support looks like in action. Today we're here with Belle. Belle, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
And Belle, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Belle Sandhu. I've been a consultant for 14 plus years now here at BCCFA as a consultant with Vancouver Supported Child Development.
Can you tell us a little bit more about supported child development and what your role entails?
Supported Child Development is a program that was a pilot actually here in Vancouver. So the city of Vancouver is the first one to run it as a pilot, and it was obviously very successful because it's been running for over 25 plus years. The primary role of purpose of having this program is to support children to integrate into typical programs and be successful and be able to participate to their fullest potential. I would say that our two sort of guiding principles for what supported child development stands for is inclusion and family-centered practice. Inclusion meaning, that every child has the right to be in a program and participate in all aspects of their curriculum. And family-centered practice, the easiest way I define that is by just saying that the family feels that they're in the driver's seat at all times.
What does inclusion look like when it comes to understanding children's behaviors?
When we're talking about behavior, to me, I think that's where we need to start. Behavior is a form of communication. I think the shift is happening, but we're still not fully there, that looking at the word behavior and not linking it in any negative way. And so I think, again, it comes back to inclusion. Just because child is having trouble regulating or is struggling with transitions, and that's when we're seeing behaviors, doesn't mean that we can't support this child to be included into a program and fully participate.
So you mentioned that often behavior is kind of seen as a negative word, and we kind of want to start shifting more towards neutrality. How do we begin that work?
I think, again, we need to look at behavior as form of communication. This child is trying to communicate something to us. And I think when we start looking at a behavior in that sense, then we can come up with a lot more positive solutions and strategies to support that child.
And when you talked about dysregulation, can you tell us a little bit more about what dysregulation is?
Before we talk about dysregulation, I'm going to talk about regulation. To me, regulation, a lot of people hear the word regulation and they think being in this, a calm state. Being regulated should not mean that you have to be calm. I think that's really important. The way I view it, I think that being regulated is being connected, being aware of what's happening in our body, how our emotions look like in our body, and how we support that. What coping strategies are we gonna? And this is where the co-regulation piece really comes in, and children mirror everything that we do, including older ones. So it's okay to say, for an adult to say, I am feeling really dysregulated today, and this is what that looks like. I'm anxious, and this is what I'm feeling, and I need to do A, B, and C. Above all, co-regulation is extremely important when we're trying to help children regulate.
And what can a regulated child look like?
So regulation looks different for everyone. For example, I'm standing right now. How am I regulating myself? I'm kind of twiddling my thumbs and moving myself a little bit. And so it looks different for everyone. You can have someone who isolates themselves from the peers, and that's their sort of mental break. They need that mental break. Or it might be that someone comes in right away. They need to go for a run. They need to be outside. They can't be inside at that moment. Regulation looks different for everyone. And again, I'm going to say that being regulated does not mean being calm. It's more about how you're connected to yourself in that moment.
So I think it's safe to say that if regulation looks different for each child, that dysregulation will also look different for each child?
You can almost see the similar behaviors. A dysregulated child may have outbursts. They may get, physically they can get quite stimulated, or you can get the understimulated. They're completely isolated themselves from the group. They remove themselves from the peers, and that's another form of dysregulation as well.
Talking to you has been so much fun. The passion that you have really shines through. What would you say keeps you inspired in your role?
What keeps me inspired is seeing the progress in the children that we're supporting, and so those visits when I go into programs are probably the most special days when I get to go in.
I was so inspired by Belle's passion for understanding children's behaviors that I wanted to learn more. So she invited me to Jericho Kids Club, a program that is doing excellent work in supporting children's behaviors.
Alicia, this is Wes.
Hi Wes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Would you mind giving us a brief introduction?
I'm Wesley. I'm from Jericho Kids Club out in Kitsilano. We're a before and after school care program that is licensed for 100 children.
Would you mind explaining what the center does well when it comes to understanding and approaching children's behaviors?
Yeah, we're very child focused. We're curious in all children and their ability, and kind of what their actions and what their behaviors mean on a day-to-day basis.
So when you say child-focused, I know both of you were talking about how important it is to be child-focused. What can that look like?
That could mean that when staff are looking at program planning, that it is taking into consideration obviously heavily into what their interests are at the moment, and looking at how that you may need to adapt your environment, modify your environment, being flexible.
Understanding their age and their appropriate development in their different stages.
Awesome. And so with child-focused programming in mind, how often are you adapting the environment?
As needed. So on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, just to ensure that they're engaged, but also understanding that just like adults, things change throughout day-to-day, and we adapt accordingly so they feel at home and at ease within our space.
Are there any signs that you notice occurring, maybe within the children that kind of give you a clue as to, oh, maybe I should start adapting something?
We get to know them very, very personally. So we see a lot. We see a lot of changes. It can be as simple as they're coming in, they're a little bit extra hyper for a day, or they're coming in, they're very low. So we kind of speak to them, we kind of understand, hey, what's going on? What do you need? And then over time, if there is stuff that needs to be adapted, we do so. So it really is dependent on them.
So Wes, can you speak a bit more to how you include families in the day-to-day programming?
Our staff do a lot in building relationships with families, not even just the families, but everybody in the community, because we all work together collaboratively, so the teachers and us, and we get to know them on a personal level, so where they're going, what are they doing outside of school and after school care. So by knowing that, we gain an understanding of what's going on.
It's important for children to see the adults that they spend most of their day with, or part of their day with, to have that positive relationship. Part of behaviors is looking at having those positive peer sort of, not just peer, but adult to adult or those interactions. And so even, the greetings in the morning or the goodbye in the afternoon, it's a Friday afternoon, so what are your plans? And when children see that, you're modeling those and building that trust and really working on that relationship piece. That's crucial when you're addressing some of these behaviors at times.
They're not seeing us just talk to their parents because they're in trouble.
And what does inclusive programming look like to you, and how is it connected to understanding children's behaviors?
Inclusive programming to me means that every child gets an opportunity to be within the program. My ultimate goal is ultimately when children are in our space and anybody comes through our space, no one knows what's happening. They see everybody as equals and everybody as full of potential and opportunities too. It takes more than just us. It takes a collaborative bunch, including the families and including support child development, where we work collaboratively together and understanding that, again, every child is different. Every child has a different developmental path. But just like children, adults are kind of learning within our space. So capacity building their ability. So when children come, we're prepared to support as many children as possible. But pre-planning is very important because to take in a kid or to not have an idea would be challenging. And it doesn't support everybody. We look at it as every child can support every other child within a space.
And can you tell us about a time where you collaborated with one another to improve the program?
We struggled with regulation or understanding because I was still learning on my own. And we went to Belle and asked her, hey, we have a child that is struggling, but also that child kind of, his peers are struggling too with self-regulation, and there's a lot of emotions within a space. So we kind of asked her, what can we do? And how can we help? And
so we followed up with one of the things that was I suggested was that Wes and one of the leads from his team take training that was coming up just particularly on that topic, zones of regulation or understanding regulation. And then we followed up with bringing in some of the resources that were relevant to that training. So, adapted material, social stories, visual cues. We did some posters, things like that, just to introduce it to the group.
Yeah, and over time, it's a core part of our program and helping all the kids. So when they come in, regardless of if they're doing well with regulation or not, they get the basics and foundations of understanding zones, just so they can capacity build their understanding of their emotions. Zones of regulations is a simplified way to help create a common language for children and adults, because as children develop, their vocabulary develops, and when we're throwing in a bunch of big words, such as I'm frustrated. Frustrated could mean anything to a 5-year-old, so we kind of use blue zone or green zone or yellow zone or red zone. Blue zone, they're a little bit sad, low energy. Green zone, they're optimal energy in their grade. Yellow, they're in a heightened state and a little bit. And then red zone, they just can't control themselves. So we work with, and Belle has provided many materials of understanding how to help children understand what zone they're in and what are tools and strategies that we can use. And Belle provides a lot of strategies and tools to provide, so it can be creating a toolkit, and those supplies come from BC Center for Ability, and helping them understand, like, hey, when I'm in my yellow zone, I will look in my toolkit, I will use this material to help me re-regulate to get back down to green zone or a more optimal state.
The other piece to remember when we're talking about regulation behaviors is that there's several factors that play a role. The environment itself, how your environment is set up, what is available for the children within that environment. Transitions can be a huge trigger. So looking at, are these transitions supporting the children that we're taking care of, that are in your program, and is it meeting the needs of the children? Do they know what's happening, what the expectations are? And then the last one being, I think a huge, very important one is that mutual respect and those positive interactions. That's really important.
Behavior is communication. When we take a step back and try to understand what a child is communicating through their actions, we can co-regulate with them much easier. Remember to be patient with yourself and the children in your care as you navigate this complex understanding. There is no magic wand, so take the time to determine what works best for you and the children in your care. We invite you to reflect on your own understanding of children's behaviors and consider what you'd like to learn more about. Staying curious allows us to keep learning and implementing strategies that create inclusive programs that support all children.